Let me, okay, there.
All right. So for the for the for the people watching, could you please introduce yourself, your name, your position?
Yes, I am Dr. Daryl Camp, Superintendent, San Lorenzo Unified School District. This is my second year as superintendent of this wonderful district.
All right. Thank you. So first question, how is distance learning different this year from what we did last spring? More specifically, what is the plan for grading during the school year? Will it be credit/no credit?
That's a great first question. I'll start off by just saying that we learned some things last year. And obviously at the end last year, when we were forced to pretty much go overnight from in-person instruction to distance learning, that I won't say we're caught off guard, but it was a change, a massive change for the entire education community. And we did our best and we learned some things. Obviously, we did not at that time want students to be harmed by this dramatic change in education. So the decision was made pretty quickly with us and other school districts, many school districts from around the state, to hold students' grades harmless, especially secondary level, hold the grades harmless. So the idea of either a pass-fail or your grade would not go down was prominent around the state. What we learned, however, was that probably had a demotivating impact on student involvement. So I'm safe in saying that there will be some expectations with assessment and grades as we start off this school year. The other part, obviously, when we ended last school year, if we were relying on students logging on, and we knew that some students did not have either a computer and or internet access. So that became a major focus during the months of late March and April, just getting internet access and computers in the hands of our students. We distributed somewhere, I think it was between 2,700 and 3,000 Chromebooks across our district, and our district's about 9,800 students. So that was a major focus. And then the other area that we focused on was trying to get some hotspots to some students that were in need of internet connectivity. We learned also there's portions of our school district that even with the hotspots, there's not a tower nearby to connect to the hotspots. So it's similar to what many rural school districts were experiencing, where there's not much, there's not a infrastructure to support internet access in those parts of our state. So that's the long answer to the question of, will there be some grading expectations? Yes, and we're currently working with the San Lorenzo Education Association, or San Lorenzo Education Association, or SLEA, and trying to define or more clearly define what that's going to look like. Obviously, each teacher has their own, they come up with their own standards working within the department and within the school. So, but students will have some expectations with grading, yes.
So thank you for that answer. Here's our next question. Will distance learning continue the same synchronous schedules that we began in the spring? So will there be 3 classes per day? Would it be like that?
You know, that's another lesson that we learned. What we heard from students was that there needed to be some more structure that in the school day, and it would be helpful of a way of structuring the meeting times and expectations, as well as how to find information. So we're doing two things. We've been in conversation all July with committees, and I know there was a student focus group that met near the mid to end of July, and came up with a draft schedule for each of the different levels, elementary, middle, and high. And we're now in the process of finalizing those schedules, working alongside the San Lorenzo Education Association. So we're pretty confident that there will be a schedule very similar to what you described, where students will have an expectations to meet and log in probably probably 3 classes a day. And so that will be the expectation. There was one other part to that. Oh, the other part to that too is we just recently purchased, board approved, the learning management system, Canvas. I know some students that are taking junior college courses, community college courses, are familiar with it. I think it's utilized at Chabot, but it's a way of housing the learning, if you will, housing where students go to log on, where assignments can be kept, syllabi, those type of things. Because the other lesson that we learned was, well, you might have one teacher that's using Google Classroom, another one that's Zoom, another one maybe, was it Microsoft Meets, or no, I'm misterming it, but you know what I mean, right? So we had all these different platforms that were being utilized by teachers. And imagine if you're a parent and you're trying to support the work of your students, and you have students, 2 or 3 students, and they're using multiple platforms, it leaves it rather chaotic. So we're, through this purchasing of the learning management system, Canvas, we hope to house the information, but that won't be available immediately. We have to do some things to make sure that our system is interfacing with Canvas, and then we need to do things to prepare our educators so they're familiar with the system. We're hopeful that that will be rolled out to students and our families sometime in that October space.
Okay. So as you said before, oh yeah, thank you for your answer.
No problem.
As you said before, last year, the district distributed around 3,000 Chromebooks, 2,700 to 3,000. What plans does the district have right now to continue to support students with limited technology access?
Good. That's a good question. It's one that we ask frequently, and Dr. Sadiq in our Technology Integration Services Department and staff have been working on that. One decision that we made last year was to allow students to keep the Chromebooks over the summer. And so that's going to minimize some of the Chromebook distribution needs as we get into the school year. But invariably, there will still be some students that will need either Chromebooks or the hotspots. And we did purchase additional hotspots. So we're anticipating, well, actually, an assessment should be going out to our families in the next few days, or within the next week, I think, that will reassess families and student needs. And then based on that, our intent obviously is to get the device, Chromebook, and a hotspot to students as quickly as possible. We're also paying attention to some of the statewide efforts. I know a major deal was just cut with a internet company and a computer company in order to get a computer that already has Wi-Fi capabilities, or not capabilities, but it already is connected, where there would be no need for a hotspot. And I think it was, I shouldn't say the names, but I think it was T-Mobile and Google, but don't quote me on that. So we're trying to pay attention to those happenings also, and seeing what we can do to get to get those devices in San Lorenzo unified, even though we know that there's a statewide effort. And statewide, the internet service providers have been part of the conversation. However, how that actually plays out in San Lorenzo, we're not 100% sure yet. If you wanted another resource, if you're dying for more research, if you look on the California Department of Education website, and I'm not sure exactly where, but you should be able to find something on digital divide or internet service providers, because they've had a series of task force meetings since March, working with the internet service providers, the Comcast, the AT&T, all those. And I think the state superintendent, Tony Thurman, and Senator Leyva from the Southern California area have spearheaded those task force. At first, I was trying to keep up, but candidly, there's been so much information over the last 3 or 4 months. We have a lot of people trying to keep up with that information.
So, as you know, technology is not the only thing that impacted students during this time. A lot of students, especially who go to schools, they rely on the hot meals that the schools provide. So, are you still planning on distributing meals to students over the school year?
Absolutely, absolutely. What we currently have, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but within the schedule that will, we hope to establish and communicate to our families, there's a lunchtime period where our child and nutrition services will be distributing meals to students. At the end of last year, or throughout, actually since the pandemic and the shutdown started, we were distributing meals usually 5 days a week on most weeks. We're going to reduce that, but when our students come to pick up the meals, there will be, if you will, double portions. So it will be minimizing the times that people need to come to the school, but the proportions will be greater in order to cover a 2 or 3 day period instead. Because we plan on distributing meals, I think it was 2 days a week, it might be 3 days a week. And we're gonna do it from, I think it was 4 elementary sites, 1 high school, 1 middle, I believe. Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, but definitely we're going to continue to distribute meals.
So as coronavirus remains a risk, uh, would would you and the district contest a federal or state mandate forcing students to go back to in-school instruction prematurely?
Will we contest it? What's the question?
Yeah, would you contest it?
Uh, well, that's interesting. In California, I know there's a lot of talk at the federal level with our president and our secretary of education. The reality is that uh, school decisions are largely made at the statewide level in our democracy here in the United States, and even further so in California. They're really left up to the local level, the local school boards. However, there was uh, some intervention at the governor's level, the state level. I think it was 2 weeks ago, the governor established that certain counties will be placed on a watch list, and if your school districts were in those counties, then you're forbidden pretty much from opening up to 100% distance learning. Forbidden for opening up for in-person learning if you're in a school district that county's on the watch list. For us, Alameda County is on the watch list, so we really don't even have that option. There were a few school districts that were planning on opening up in sort of a hybrid model, but because now we're on the watch list, that's no longer an option. There in the governor's executive order a few weeks ago, there was a provision made for a waiver for K through 6, kindergarten through 6th grade schools to open up. But in order to get that, you had to do a few things. You had to be in consultation with your community and your labor partners, in other words, your unions. And I said the stakeholders, your families and students. And then you had to take that waiver after that consultation to in our case, the Alameda County Health Department, in order to get that waiver to have even a hybrid model or in-person instruction for grades K through 6. Our health department, Alameda County Health Department, that says they won't be approving waivers right now because our cases, all the data points, well, not all, but the indicators that they're looking at doesn't, in their professional opinions, it's not safe to do so at this point. The conditions don't lend themselves to having students back in school. So for us, it's not really about contesting, and nobody can mandate us to come back to school. At the federal level, there was talk about withholding funding, but funding's approved at the federal funding's approved at the congressional level more than the president. And I think our Congress in the House and Senate have been fairly consistent with funding education to the level that they have before. Even in previous budgets, when the president suggested reducing the budgets for that go to school districts, and most school districts only receive somewhere around 8 to 10% of the funding from the federal government. So it hasn't been something that a lot of us have put a lot of time and energy into. I will say this, in this, there's currently conversation with the House and the Senate about the next emergency relief package. I'm sure you're aware the HEROES Act was approved by the Congress, in May, late May, I think it was. And now the Senate approved the HEALS Act. And there's conversation about, utilizing, you might get some federal funding, additional funding, but if you don't open up schools 100%, then that will be reduced. And I haven't heard any school district say, "Ooh, we're going to open up just to get the funding." No, it's about thinking about the safety of our families, our students, our staff, and doing what's right for us locally.
So students, as we know, are not the only ones who are at risk for getting the coronavirus. But if we were to undergo hybrid learning somewhere along, let's say down the road, how would you accommodate to teachers and staffs to ensure their safety?
Boy, that's a tall order, right? Just like all the other sectors in the economy, there's some expectations. There's some safety expectations that you need to adhere to if you're going to open up your particular business, if you will, and ours being the sector of education. So we fully intend on complying with the guidance that is provided to us by the Alameda County Health Department. And the major parts of that guidance would mean the same thing you've been hearing. Try to, maintain physical distancing of at least 6 feet. That's been, essential. The other part would be washing hands frequently, and when you don't have soap and water available, we have hand sanitizers that's available. And then of course it seems, I don't know why it became controversial, but the wearing the mask part, or face coverings. Those are something that we intend to do to keep people safe. Our custodial staff, our maintenance staff, has been working on their process and procedures for keeping the building sanitized, where they intend to do more regular cleanings of especially high touch surface areas, doorknobs, light switches, things like that. So those are, they've been in constant communication. They've gone through the required trainings, and that's what they intend to do to keep our buildings safe for students and staff. And so those are the same things that we will have in place as more and more people begin to access our building, whenever that is. I don't know when that will be, but those are the same things that we're going to do. In fact, if you went by our district office, I bet the school sites too, you'll see some of the signage that's required now. In order to, just like all these other businesses, when you go shopping, they have to have signage at the door. We do too, and it has to say, "Hey, you're mandated to have a face covering," right? So we if we have adults or students, young adults that refuse to wear the mask, they can't be in the building. It's defying a health order at that point. So you just can't. One of our greatest challenges will be how do you enforce face coverings for students that it's not a defiance issue. It's just it's hard to keep it on. You imagine some younger students, how are you going to monitor it? You know how to monitor, but how are you going to enforce that with the younger students? And then some of our students with exceptional needs as well. How are you going to enforce it? But those are being considered all around the nation at this time, right?
So, as you know, because of the economy, attendance may be difficult now for some students who have to carry jobs or have to take care of family at home while their parents aren't. So will the attendance system be altered in a way to support those students?
We're still working out the kinks of that. We're under, what was it, Senate Bill 98. You might have looked at it already. It was the trailer bill that was approved along with the Budget Act. It gave some stipulations of how or what counted as attendance. So what we're trying to do now is to convert our previous system to the new system of how you keep track of attendance. And the law, if you read it literally, says that there's an expectation for, well, there's a definition for what's distance learning, and there's, different terms that are being floated about, like synchronous instruction or live instruction, and then asynchronous instruction. Both can count for instructional minutes, but and attendance as well. So we're trying to work out our kinks of how we're going to code it essentially in our computer system. There's also an expectation though, and I hear what you're saying, it's going to create a dilemma because we will have increased stronger expectations for attendance than what we had at the end of last year. If a student's unable to meet those expectations, then we would try to work collaboratively with the family to see why and what we can do to work toward a solution. But we definitely need students to be engaged. We're still under a compulsory education law, so it says that students are expected to go to school. So that will be an expectations, and then just like any time when a student's not meeting those expectations, oftentimes that means another conversation would happen with student and family. These are great questions, by the way.
Thank you. So going back to the question about sanitizing the buildings, do we have enough staff to clean those buildings?
Currently, yes. Yes, we do. One could always make the argument you could do more with more staff, but currently we feel comfortable with the number of staff that we have. I will say there was a period of time, I think it was in June, where school districts were considering different options, like hybrid models, where maybe half the students might come one day, another half of the students might come another day. And that was purely to reduce the number of students in a classroom at any one time. The challenge of having those type of models would have been, do you have enough staff to sanitize the classroom in between groups of students? Because that was one of the, the concept was you keep the bubble or the pod or the groups of students small. So in case you have somebody that has a confirmed case of COVID-19, then you could just address that small group of students, right? And teacher, but not the whole school. And so that was part of the philosophy. And the other one is further apart is better, right? In terms of the transmission of the virus. So fewer students in a class means you can spread them out further. The only dilemma is if you have that means essentially 10 to 12 students touching desk and all that. As soon as that group of students leaves, you would need to sanitize the desk, light switch, frequently touched areas in between groups of students. That would have been tough to do with our current staffing.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So last June, in a podcast with Adventures in Ed Funding, you said something about flexibility being part of the district's plan. If miraculously the pandemic were just to go away, how prepared do you think teachers and other staff of the schools would be to just jump into in-school instruction? How long would it take to go from distance learning to in-school instruction?
I'm impressed with your research first. I didn't think anybody listened to that podcast, but okay. And I did mention flexibility, and I'm still at the same space. That's my key term for this school year. And our challenge is we're trying to educate and be sympathetic to people, but also have some learning expectations. Because most of our students only have 13 years in K through 12 education, and we don't want to just throw away one of those years. There's some learning that we think is essential for being successful in life during each of those years. So flexibility, I still think, is critical. You asked another part that I just lost my train of thought. Say the question again.
What would the time frame be from going from distance learning into in-school instruction?
Okay. I think of the, like the governor said, some people think of this like a light switch on, pandemic off. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be sort of a phased in approach. And even as we're going to have our timeline or our expectations with the phased in, but I'm convinced already that our school timeline will not match individual timelines with how people are processing this and whether or not they feel safe. The surveys that we've put out so far, I think we've done 2 to the community. Just recently, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago, we had another survey, and we're going to share those results with the board on the 18th. On the 18th of August, those survey results. But basically, what they're going to say is there's a significant portion of our families that will not feel comfortable sending their students back for a period of time. You probably are aware of some of the national surveys saying that even if a vaccine is found, at least about 50% of the people won't feel comfortable getting a vaccine, right? Just they don't feel like it's safe to do so. And so that's going to be a challenge there. Even when the schools open up, I think we're going to have a significant number of families that will not feel comfortable sending their sons or daughters to school. They just don't feel as safe. And that's for different reasons. Some of our students have compromised health symptoms, or not symptoms, but compromising health conditions. And parents don't want their students around a lot of other people during that under those conditions, and I can understand it. So I think on our end, we're going to have to be flexible to be able to accommodate students as they come back to school, and to be able to serve those students also if the family chooses to keep the students at home. So that's going to be quite a challenge. The other part playing into that is previously our funding was based on the number of students we had and students coming to school. So that was the expectations, you come to school. So we will need some legislative help saying it's okay for students to stay home and for us not to lose, our funding to serve that student. So those are down the line, but I think that's going to be something that our state and school districts will have to contend with down the line. I was going to say in a few, but then I can't fill in the last word there. Weeks, months, years. I'm not sure about that. Just say remaining time 10 minutes, huh?
Yeah.
Is it because we started late?
No, it's because this is the free version of Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Alexis, do you have anything?
No, I have no more questions.
All right. Just a last thing. We appreciate your answers, Dr. Camp. If you were to say anything to the district, like what to expect, or any comments about the next year, or on the 20th, you can go ahead and say it if you want.
Yeah, I would say to our district, our students, our families, I just felt horrible with the pandemic, especially for the class of 2020, and not being able to have a traditional graduation ceremony at this time. It just hurts me. I feel for the students that aren't able to have the socialization, especially that happens in school. I feel bad about the academic part too, but I know there's so many great things happen socially too, and in extracurricular activities. And I just feel like you're losing on that, and it hurts my heart. I do ask everybody though to just say, okay, just students that are going through this, you'll be able to talk about this for years. Remember, people, unless you were around in 1918, you haven't been through this. So I just encourage people to, keep doing your best. Take care of yourself. I'm really concerned, and I know our staff's really concerned that there's a certain level of anxiety and fear and worry, that's not good for our health overall. So, at the root of everything, I say take care of yourself. Make sure you're practicing self-care. You're, do what you need to do to minimize your anxiety, which normally means talk to people, exercise regularly, and journal. Just things to process what you're feeling, and your feelings are your feelings. And this is one thing, it doesn't really matter, young adult or adult. I think everybody's going through, this is strange for everybody. So I would just say, take care of yourselves, ask if you need help, and we'll do what we can to make sure that we have our staff available. We have social workers and counselors that can help out. And the last thing is, while doing that, we're going to try to create a learning environment where students can continue with their education. I know it's going to be different. So, but everybody just needs to keep communicating, sharing ideas, and for the students that are listening to this, or if they see this, I'm really excited working with our students this year. I know Sebastian, you had an interest in really getting a lot more involved. I'll put this invitation out to you. If you want to be a part of our Superintendent Student Advisory Council, I invite you. My plan is to work with Grace C. Mora and have a student advisory committee that's going to meet at least monthly, where we discuss about issues that are relevant to students and our school district. So I'm really excited about that. It's going to be, I think, a lot of invigorating and informative conversations. So if students are interested in that, I know I can't have everybody, but it's going to be a lot larger than what it's been the previous years, and I'm looking forward to those conversations.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Camp. We don't want to take any more of your time.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we hope to talk to you soon, later
All
down
right.
the road.
Anytime. Thanks for your patience too with the technology and
Absolutely.
where are we? All right.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Have a great year.
You too.
Bye.
That was a good grade.
That was good.